All right. Okay, welcome to the September session of our Lead Educator Development Series. This is, I believe, number 3 of the year, and our next and last one is planned for November, right before fall conference. So we are recording this so that we can add it onto the Lead Educator resources page. Today we're focusing a little bit of our time on supervisor training and the supervisor role of the lead educator roles and responsibilities. So I'm going to skip ahead here to share our agenda to give you an overview of where we're headed and what's up on the schedule for today. Like I said, we're going to focus our training on supervisor responsibilities, and we have a guest here with us, Cindy from INR, and so I'll introduce her when it's time for that. We will do an idea share today around balancing the lead educator role and your programming responsibilities as an educator. Just thought we could get into breakout rooms and share what's working, and even if you'd like, what's not working, and hopefully have some time to support each other in the lead educator role, and get some new ideas potentially there. And then we'll have our lead educator briefing from Dave, who has some topics to share with all of you. And then, as usual, we'll close out with what needs do you have currently in the lead educator role, or what questions do you have, and how can we support you in this space. So I am going to kick it off and turn it over to Cindy. So Cindy Chopik is, if I'm pronouncing that right, Cindy, is our INR personnel and finance. She is hosting a number of trainings through INR HR, and wanted to make sure all of you aware of those. I have participated in a few of those, and so can endorse them directly. And that was why I invited Cindy to be with us today to share with all of you that these resources also exist. So I'll hand it over to you, Cindy.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate the personal endorsement. That certainly helps. My last name is Kopich, so I don't want you to have to struggle with that. So anyway, welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here. Just a little bit about my background, just so you know who you're dealing with. I am relatively new. Last couple years, have worked with IANR. And have a background in HR, but I'm actually an educator. So I started out in elementary education. I have my master's in administration and my doctorate in educational leadership. And this position for specifically for learning and development is part-time for me with the department now. So I can't say that I get to spend 100% 40 hours a week on learning and development, but we probably could. So one of the areas of focus that we found is that their supervisors do need extra support, and trying to make that holistic and available to everyone. So all of our sessions are available to both employees and current supervisors. So there is nothing that's specific just to supervisors. And I do that intentionally because we don't know that an employee isn't going to apply for a job as a supervisor, might be exploring their interest in being a supervisor. And I think both employees and supervisors also need to kind of understand the expectations from both perspectives. So I found it beneficial. So just a couple things on what sort of the philosophy is. We've really tried to shift from more of a training and sort of a one and done approach to more learning and development. And so what that means is we might have longer series of sessions that require a little bit of work. So we do sometimes have sessions that require pre-work, and usually we make a request that you take some action following the session as well. So you're not just sitting and getting, I call it the sit and get. We're not doing the sit and get. We're actually expecting participation, and really trying to model a lot of our sessions on adult learning theory, so that we're working on more relevant examples. We're honoring the experience of people that attend, which means that people usually come and participate, just like Megan asked. We ask people to, turn on their cameras, we go into small group and, have discussions. So that's just a little bit of a background Some of the sessions you'll find on the website will be just one-time things that are kind of quick. Other times you'll see things that are more extended and they might have 6 sessions to them. So that the reason that is sort of built that way is that we're just trying to shift a little bit from more of what I would say people like, you know, they turn on their or they sign up for something and they're going to eat their lunch at their desk and just half listen in. We're actually trying to do a little bit more to get people engaged. It does take time, as I'm sure all of you are aware, in your roles. So that's just what you'll start seeing as a shift. So in my role, I specifically, my main priority is supporting staff, some of which are supervisors, obviously, but the majority are staff. They're not supervisors. However, one of the things that we decided is the best way we can kind of support staff in the workplace is by also supporting supervisors. So that's why we've offered some additional supervisor type trainings. And obviously you also have Lisa Caslon as your main extension professional development resource. So I'm kind of the secondary one that works all across the state. Primarily, that means that a lot of my sessions are virtual because I serve the entire state. Occasionally, I do in person based on sort of maybe a group has like a group already interested in a topic and I can come out in and help facilitate. Sometimes around like a book study. We had a group here on campus that was a group of supervisors and support staff that looked at crucial conversations. So we did a book discussion and sort of a book club. So some things like that might go on the side that you don't see on the website. But I'm going to go over a couple things for you just to also for yourselves, but please also share these with staff that are also UNL employees, because I think that's a tremendously beneficial. I do see that participation, and you probably noticed this maybe in some of your roles, I have participation that kind of slows down over the summer just based on the busy schedule of staff. And so we're just starting to kind of gear back up. So for example, the first session, if you want to click on the link in the chat and go to the website, you just scroll down and you'll see kind of a drop down menu of various sessions. The first one, building supervisor skills, that one's kind of phasing out because I'm adding a new one in. So you'll see some of these are sort of on a cycle. And I'll get to what I'm replacing it with in a minute, but we do have workplace appreciation sessions coming up this fall. Again, that's for everyone. It is helpful to have, obviously, supervisors understand the importance of appreciation. Thanks, Megan. But one of the purposes of the workplace appreciation session is to help staff understand how they can support appreciation from one to, you know, between each other as a team. So not just relying on the supervisor, but also encouraging the team to recognize the efforts of others and how, you know, we can all kind of work together. So that's coming up. That one is an hour, and you'll see they have various session times, just like anything, and you just register and then I add you to the calendar invite. Resolution to revolution. This is probably one of my favorites, I'll be honest. This is a session that I put together based on participating in the Yale Habits of Happiness. And it is a little bit of an opportunity for me to advertise the other session that we do, but I try to incorporate information from this Yale session, but also Atomic Habits and a couple other resources into a presentation on how to move your, you know, kind of goals that you might have, whether personally or professionally, into more habits so that it has a more of a long-term impact. This one is not as participatory because there's a lot of information and I tried to kind of shove it into an hour. I'll be honest, it's a little intense. So there's that one. I think one that is very relevant to you right now would be elevating your performance conversation. This one is what I kind of added in addition to building supervisor skills. And this one came about because we have a lot of people that are either relatively new to using our sort of model of performance conversations in Trackstar. But just having a face-to-face performance conversation, whether you're new or you've been doing it a while, it's helpful to hear new ideas. Also for staff to kind of hear how they should be organizing their information and preparing for that, and supervisors. So that might be something that's relevant to all your staff and yourselves. So you might want to check that out. And then Habits of Happiness has already started. However, oh, it didn't already start. That's the workplace culture one. So Habits of Happiness starts in October. That's a 6-session series. And that is based on the curriculum by Yale professor, Dr. Laurie Santos. Are any of you familiar with Dr. Laurie Santos' work? Okay, I'm pretty obsessed with that. So this is more of a sort of an accountability group. So the curriculum's already laid out from Yale. I went through and took it probably a year and a half ago. And then we basically set this up so we go through the curriculum and have kind of an accountability piece so that we meet on a regular basis. We talk about what we learned and how we're going to implement it. It is called Habits of Happiness for a reason, because it is really about developing habits of wellness. So that starts up, and it is participatory. It's usually a small group, which is totally okay. But if that's something that interests you, please join us, because that will start up. Any questions about those so far? Okay. I usually try to be really clear about learning objectives and sort of what you're going to experience in all these. Unfortunately, the best sort of resource for promotion of these has been the staff council newsletter, which many of you don't get. And I do try to advertise in the IANR newsletter, but I think that's kind of hit and miss. I don't get a ton of registration. So anything you can do to sort of promote these to your staff is helpful. The workplace culture session has already started. We had session 1, and then we have session 2 actually this afternoon. And this started because primarily how I go about identifying topics is that I work with our employee relations person, Nancy Ray. You probably all know Nancy or have heard her name. So I typically talk to Nancy and say, hey, Nancy, what issues are you experiencing in employee relations? And then we try to build proactive sessions around that. So that's how some of the building supervisor skills sessions came about. That's why Habits of Happiness came about, and also workplace culture. So workplace culture is one of the biggest areas that we can use as a retention mechanism. So building a positive workplace culture when we can't necessarily pay people what the outside market might pay, we're trying to help people, all staff, including supervisors, but also staff members, understand how they can impact and what they can do to impact workplace culture. So that is also a 6-part series. I post the resources a week in advance. People read those. We then discuss them in small groups. And at the end of the session, they come up with like an action step that they take. So again, these are trying to model a little bit more in-depth adult learning and participation in order to change behavior. I just really, my theory is that, sitting in a 1-hour session probably isn't going to change much behavior. We might learn a couple tips and tricks, but we're probably not going to, really impact anything dramatically. And that can be, that can be hard to set up a model like that with somewhat limited resources and time for people to participate. The rest of the options on our website are more things that just are reminders that you can participate in. I think Lisa Caslon is probably your contact for Gallup Strengths team sessions, but we do those on a regular basis because there's been such high turnover in teams. And so renewing like your strengths discussion and your focus on strengths is really important. And then the rest of these offerings are things that are hosted more by the university as a reminder. So I did, just because I was meeting with you today, I did talk to Nancy a bit about kind of what are some of the trends that she sees with supervisors? What are some of the needs? And actually, we're working on a little bit of a video to just leave up. And it's been taking a really long time to get together, but that should be available soon. And one of the things we've been kind of working on in conjunction with Nancy is this notion that, having conversations about performance, especially performance that isn't necessarily what you're wanting, can be really challenging. And one of the things that Nancy sees is that supervisors aren't really very clear. And then they just get frustrated and call Nancy, but they really haven't taken the time to be extremely clear with employees. And I think it's because we don't want to, we either avoid difficult conversations, and I've been there because I've been a supervisor, and it can be really, uncomfortable. However, I've tried to really encourage people, not only myself to view it this way, but also encourage supervisors to view that they're being really firm and direct about expectations is actually more kind than not. Because employees do deserve an opportunity to know where they're not meeting expectations, and then to have the time to correct it. And they can't do that if they don't understand. And we can't assume employees actually know what we're thinking. And sometimes we just have to, be really clear. And then the other thing is, once we've had that conversation, send an email and just say, hey, thank you so much. I'll use Megan as thank you, Megan, for meeting with me today. During our meeting today, we discussed, this, and this. Moving forward, this is what I expect. Please let me know if you need any support in this or have any questions. So it's a documenting the conversation. So the other thing Nancy reminded me is, once you've reached the point with an employee where you've had a series of pretty, significant issues and you've addressed them, it must be documented in their performance review. So she often, and I've seen this because I've done employee relations for more than 10 years. So I would have supervisors call and express concerns about performance, but then I would go in and look at the performance review, and there was nothing in there that documented any concerns. So we can't have performance conversations without making sure we document that in the TrackStar system, because at UNL, that is the personnel documentation. That's the formal documentation. So you need to make sure that when you're having those performance conversations, that you're also bringing up concerns, and making sure, that the employee documents those once you've had that one-on-one. So as you know, with our performance documentation, the employee starts it, you have the conversation, and then you can add comments. Okay, so the opportunity that you have to add comments is important, especially if the employee didn't document it appropriately. Does that make sense? So if you have questions about that, and before you actually make it final, contact Nancy Ray. I'm not your point of contact there. I did do employee relations for a period of time before I went part-time, but it is really essential that you are very clear. You can still be nice about it, but it is important that you're really clear and sort of detailed about what you expect. I know that can be challenging, and I know being a supervisor is not always very, very much fun. But I do think when we can address concerns, it does make it much easier for the team, because they're all probably having the same annoyance that you're having with individuals who aren't kind of pulling their weight. And then it can kind of it can either bring down kind of workplace culture if issues aren't being addressed, or it can increase it if they know that everybody's being held to the same expectation. So I think that would be kind of the big reminder for supervisors. I'm very clear with employees about this process as well, and that is covered kind of in that elevating performance conversation. I don't spend a ton of time on that because we talk about how you can answer the questions in a more productive manner, but I do bring that up because I think employees need to understand that as well, and that when they show up at a performance conversation, there should be no surprises. So what that means is that can't be the first time they've been told about a concern. And I mean, unless it's like something really dramatic, but it should be documented there, but they should have had a conversation with you prior. So I hope that makes sense. Do you have any questions about that? Or anything else?
I'll open it up to the group, yeah.
ahead,
Questions for
Megan.
Cindy, I was gonna say, questions for Cindy, and give a little time.
Megan and Cindy, if I could just add, we're talking about primarily probably university employees who are in the TrackStar system, but many of you also supervise county employees who are not in that system. And you can certainly use if the county doesn't have a system or process that they prescribe and require, you can certainly use the UNL system either in paper or Cindy, I'm not sure if we can get them in the TrackStar system or not. Okay, so we can use the same questions and the same process, just document it on paper rather than electronically.
Thanks, Dave. Good point, because that is the TrackStar system is only for UNL employees. And there are some differences, for handling county employees that wouldn't necessarily fall under Nancy Ray's support, but she's pretty good about helping you identify what ones do and don't fall within that. And you might find different rules. I think that's also what makes it maybe a little bit more challenging in your role to supervise your employees, is that you might have employees with, different policies and procedures than just being, UNL employees. So, but thank you for bringing that up, because that is an important designation. I think I do the performance management orientation, but Marcy Sturck, my coworker, does administers the TrackStar system. So that's another thing. If you have newer employees that do fall within that, make sure they register for an orientation, because we do kind of talk about some of this as well. And I think there's documentation that you can get from Marcy if it's not posted on the website, where you could download all the questions and kind of the format if you wanted to use the, this with like county employees if they don't have kind of a performance review. And just a heads up, we did alter, well, I didn't, but the dates for performance conversations have shifted a little bit. So you might want to go on to the IANR performance management. Like if you scroll back up to the top of the website link I gave you, you'll find performance management, and you can see the performance management conversation window has changed slightly. We're trying to kind of shorten it a little bit, because typically what we found is, regardless of how long the window is open, people end up doing their performance conversation 3 weeks before the performance review. So before the deadline. So we're trying to kind of shrink it a little, but it does make it challenging based on like the workload of certain teams throughout the cycle. So if you have questions about the performance management system, that goes to Marcy. If you forget, you happen to email me, I will get you to the right person. So no worries.
So if we have heard nothing about evaluating anyone in this system, and I have 2 employees that I should be evaluating, I need to email Marcy.
Actually, I don't think the dates on this were updated. So the window opens on September 15th. So you will get notifications when you need to have the performance review. It doesn't look like these got updated, actually. So I know I just did a session on this. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't remember the date. But September 15th, you should get automated emails. You do not need to worry about when you need to hold those conversations. So that will be the start of the window. And I believe it goes till November. So, no, December. So you should have plenty of time to get that done. I rely on the system to remind me. And I mean, I'll talk to Marcy about getting that updated, but don't worry about having to necessarily remember that, because you will get the system emailing you and your employees. Thanks, Jennifer, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No additional questions. Cindy, thank you so much for being here and sharing all that with everyone. Hopefully that was some new information for all of you, even if you're interested in some of the additional pieces that, again, we do have a robust system of professional development that exists within Extension, but it's also good to know what is offered under the larger INR umbrella. And like I said, I've participated in a few of these. And they've been beneficial. And so wanted to be able to extend that to all of you if you weren't aware. And then certainly you can extend that to other colleagues as well. So
yes, please do. And thank you so much for the opportunity to advertise a little bit. And I hope to see you all in a session coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to transition into our breakouts with our idea share for the day. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see what that question is, and I'll throw it in the chat for y'all as we go into breakout. So again, the prompt here is, what are you doing to balance lead educator role with programming responsibilities? I think it's always good to check back in on what does balance look like? What are things you're intentionally doing either on your calendar or if you're scheduling? I know things can pop up in the lead educator space, and sometimes we feel like we're doing more or being pulled in one direction more than others. But potentially, how are you leveraging resources in order to accomplish some of those lead educator pieces while also balancing programming pieces? I know that you are doing this. I know it exists. I know it happens. It may not feel like it sometimes, and you may not be feeling in a space where you feel balanced right now. And so maybe what you gain, you may not feel like you have things to contribute in the conversation, but maybe you gained from the conversation today too. And so I want to make sure we have space for both of those things. So I'm going to kick us into breakouts. We're going to have about 7 minutes there, and then we're going to come back and have our briefing with Dave. All right, welcome back, everyone. We have hit the point in our agenda where it's time for our lead educator briefing. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave to talk about the topics he has for all of us today.
All right, thanks, Megan. So good morning, everyone. I just have a lot of quick hitters this morning, actually. So I just want to make sure you're in the loop on some things that are going on. Obviously, PAIRS is well on its way to launching. So all of the program area teams are meeting, have met last month or will meet this month. My ask for you on this front is just to check around your respective offices, make sure that extension assistants, all the educators have checked in, logged into PAIRS so that we know that they've been there. And hopefully they looked around a little bit too, just peruse the system to see what's there. But we're monitoring who's checked in and who's not checked in. So we want 100% of extension employees to be checked in by October 1. So actually I just checked just in one big program area and just had a handful of folks who were not checked in out from the counties. Most of our challenge has been more in the departments with specialists. So, but
Dave,
check around your offices on that.
Dave, I'm with Brandy, like in the chat box. Have we gotten login information? Because I know I have not done that. And it is possible I missed an email in the wealth of fair stuff. So I'm just
I just got a lot of direct messages from other 4-H educators saying I haven't gotten it yet, and I haven't either. So I kind of started to panic.
Yeah, so don't panic. I'm not 100% sure what 4-H's approach to this was. Each program area is doing it a little differently. So it'll be a mass email to all 4-H at once is likely what it will be. So
and 4-H is doing that by focus teams. So
okay,
when you get together for your focus team, so like the STEM focus team, college and career success focus team, this being distributed through those focus teams. And so that's why having a retreat or a gathering for those focus teams has been really critical to have planned before fall conference, because that should be the focus of those part of the time spent in those focus teams. Does that make sense or help with everybody in 4-H?
So Dave, what do you mean check in? Is there something that we have to put our name, our password? What?
Yeah, basically the email will just ask you, say, hey, click on this link, go in and change your password, and that will get you in the system. And so we'll know that you've opened the door to look inside the PAIRS room. And then if you have a few minutes, I'd encourage you to peruse it. One of the things you'll notice when you first log in is you probably will not see a whole lot. And that's because it's probably going to plug your name into a searching query and say, hey, Kathy Burr, what's in pairs for Kathy Burr? And there's probably nothing in there, right? So nothing will show up. So go ahead and X out your name when you log in. There'll be a little X next to your name. Just cross it out, means it's not searching for you. And then it will show you what's in the system currently, which is a lot of practice, a lot of test activities and plans. You'll see some NEP, food, nutrition, health plans in there as well. Feel free to peruse anywhere you'd like, just to look around a bit. That'll be helpful as Angie joins the various focus teams and program area teams to share more about what we're going to be, how the pairs adoption program will be working over the next few months. But check-in is the number one thing. Just check in, change your password, and we'll know you've been there. We're also going to please encourage your support staff to participate in Front Door Forum here in early October. We will be visiting with participants at Front Door Forum about pairs at some point, and this will probably be maybe after the first of the year, once all of you are more acclimated to the system. We will work on a delegation system, so you'll be able to delegate to your respective support staff. If you have a big program and you like one of your support staff members to input that data for you, that will be an option. We're just going to take that kind of slow right now because that's not a priority at the moment, but know that that's going to be a option for you all when we get start rolling with pairs. Related to pairs, there's been a lot of questions around what's going to be the annual reporting system within IANR for this year, and we do not know yet. Right, so a lot of rumors going around, but there's no official announcement. We do not know. That's all being managed by ANR leadership. So just stay tuned to learn more about what that's going to look like. It probably will have nothing to do with pairs, right? So other than we're going to, I'll just leave it at that. We'll just stay tuned. I'm not sure what combination of platforms and forms and documents INR is going to ask us to submit for this past year's annual reporting. So check into pairs, and that'll be our first step for October. And all of your teams, we've asked them to have their state action plans in by October 1. So that's what Megan was talking about earlier. The focus teams, or the entire teams based upon the size of them, are meeting this month and last month to finalize those state plans. Really important to be a part of that state plan conversation, because that's ultimately what you'll be picking from for your individual plans. And so again, encourage folks in your respective offices to be a player, to be a part of that conversation now. Second item is around onboarding assistance. So lots of new extension professionals continue to join the organization, and that local office culture, as Sandy was just talking about, is incredibly important to retaining employees. And so EZCs, program area leaders, are working hard on various onboarding strategies for these folks. We need you to be in that game too. And I know most of you do a great job with this, but make sure they feel at home. They're connecting well with extension boards, 4-H councils, volunteers, if that's part of their work. Certainly with all of the office staff. If they're coming to work and closing the door, not a good sign, right? Keep that door open, get them engaged in staff meetings, ask what they need on a frequent basis, really help engage them in the local extension office, and then encourage them to be connecting with their program areas as well. One of the new things we're going to be moving towards here in the near future, and I'm sharing this with you first, is looking for ways to incorporate our statewide educators into some of the routine things that you do, specifically with the business center paperwork. So, for example, statewide educators really have no county mailbox, if you will, or to send things through. So they don't necessarily have a portal. They're kind of just out there floating in the universe when it comes to some of the routine paperwork submission processes that we have in play. And so what we are moving towards is having statewide educators who happen to be in your county submitting that paperwork and such through your county office. and connecting with your support staff to help them as needed. So an example of this would be, I think Caitlin was on earlier. Yeah, so there's Caitlin. So Caitlin Kennedy down in Richardson County. So Laura Thompson is our on-farm research statewide coordinator who is based in Falls City. So we're going to ask that the local county office, in this case, the Richardson County office, working with Laura so she could submit some of her routine paperwork to the business center and such through your office, Caitlin. And so there might be some other things too that come along with that, but in Clay County, Dirk Charleston is our digital ag statewide specialist, happens to be officed at the vet center there. Leslie Johnson up at Haskell, Jesse Fulton out of Panhandle, Shannon Sands at West Central, Katja Kohler at Eastern Research and Extension Center. So there are a number of those folks out across the state, and we want to better connect them with our business center operations. So just something to watch for more information on. So if they need support, even sometimes just asking questions about how to submit paperwork and how to navigate various business center, whether it's P-card submissions, it could be questions relative to their program accounts or salary savings. We just want to have a local support system in place for them to lean on to help them navigate those types of questions. So Carrie, yeah, that's just whatever comes their way relative to business center operations is the primary thing.
It might also be deposits.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, that would be a big one. Because they do not have anything in place for that currently. So they'll need to work through a local office. And so we haven't even talked to these statewide folks about this yet. So we'll be doing that soon, but I want you to have a heads up that we're visiting with them about it. And then I'll circle back around during our next gathering like this to add any more details. But I just wanted you to be thinking about that. I don't expect that to be a huge burden on any of your offices. But your support staff probably can be very helpful to these folks in helping them navigate. Interlocal agreements. So we're nearing the end of our 3-year journey there. So our goal is to have all the interlocal agreements completed by the end of this December. We're about 2/3, 70% of the way there, I would say, currently, with a lot of these in motion. So just ask you work closely with your local engagement zone coordinator. This is kind of a time of year when counties are finishing up, they're finalizing their budgets. So I probably wouldn't touch base with them right now until the budget for this fiscal year is locked down. And then it would be a good time to connect with them about pursuing this interlocal agreement renewal if you haven't already started that process. So these have been going incredibly well. And so it's really a testament to your relationships with your county board members. We have had very few hiccups in these conversations with county boards over the last 2.5 years now. So your engagement zone coordinators have a lot of experience working with other counties already if you haven't done this in your county yet. So just work with them, work through that process. Also on the county board front, if your county had what you would consider an unusually high increase in their budget this year or decrease in the extension budget this year, would you just reach out to me, just give me a heads up on that? Just to let us kind of, if there's a significant change in the barometer of if you feel like the county board support in your region, let me know about that, specifically if it's dropped, if there's any challenges there. I know we've had a few challenges where county boards noticed during COVID that we weren't using mileage budgets, for example, which is, I think is very obvious why. But in some cases they've dropped their mileage budget or dropped our entire budget because of that, not anticipating that business would pick up like it already has and we would be traveling more. So things like that that you feel are notable, just drop me a note. And the last thing would be, so civil rights review. So you remember last January, February, we sent out a survey, a call tricks to all of you to complete some data relative to that civil rights review. We were anticipating it would happen in April. We got the notice in August. And so we had 45 days. That includes weekends, holidays, everything. 45 days to put everything together. And so it's thankfully we have just about everything we need from you all for that review. We may be reaching out in a few situations just to follow up relative to some of that data if we need to drill down just a little bit more. This review would be very different than past USDA NEFA civil rights compliance reviews in that it will all be handled virtually. We have 2 reviewers we're working with. They have asked us for a list of data and documents to submit to them by September 25th. We will submit all that information and then we'll wait to hear from them. They will then want to interview probably less than 10 individuals in our extension system to ask. I'm not sure what kind of questions they'll ask us. Those individuals will probably be folks like Charlie and myself, Kathleen with 4-H, some of our IEC folks downtown, Rich Bischoff in IANR, who is our IANR diversity officer. I don't know if they'll ask to visit with any lead educators or not. So we're going to try to get we're meeting with the reviewers today. So hopefully we'll get some more clarity on that. But I think we're in pretty good shape for the review. So thanks for everything you did a few months ago. It's paying dividends now because we didn't have to ask you to gather that information during state fair or Husker Harvest Days or county fairs or anything. So that worked out pretty well for us. And I think I'll leave it at that. See if there's any questions.
Dave, there is a question in the chat about pairs, back to pairs. If, for folks that have already been using that system, will they continue to use the same login?
Nancy, it's a good question. I think so. I think you will. Are you referring to Food Nutrition Health or the NEP program? Yeah, so I think you'll be good. You should be good. We're working currently on syncing up. NEP has been using this for a long time, and FNH is a good handle on as well. But I would just I think you're gonna use your current login, Nancy.
Other questions for Dave?
Dave, I'd like to ask, this is kind of an elephant in the room question, I think, but I thought maybe this group would be a good one. Is technically there any talk continuing about raising that assistant salary, the beginning salary? We keep talking about all the new people we have, and I think, and that came up in our chat, in our breakout session as well today, the struggles that people are having getting someone to even apply and then keeping them. So any word or update on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Karen. So there's really 2 things going on there. One is we have this, exactly what you described, Karen, in the eastern part of the state, a lot of pressure on competing for talent for those positions. In the western part of the state, we have county boards and extension boards and others saying, please don't do this. We won't be able to keep our extension assistants if we raise the salaries more. So we have a bit of a conundrum, from east to west. But what I expect will happen, I think those salaries will probably increase. It'll be July 1 of next year. And so we're gonna have to wait because of all the budget things going on. We're probably gonna have some communication with state senators, county board members. We may do something similar to what we did last time, give them a heads up, maybe in December-ish, that we're looking to do this on July 1 so that they can be prepared to think about that. And as you work on budgets with them, this will all be on the table. But I think that's the soonest that it will probably happen. Thanks, Megan.
So what needs do you have currently from the group, or what questions do you have is how we end? If there's, Karen said, brought up the elephant in the room. This is a space, this is meant to be a safe space. If there's any more elephants that anybody wants to talk about, we can certainly do that. And of course, I always stay on after in case people have questions that they don't want the whole group to hear, but they want answered. So I'm going to leave space for that right now.
So Dave, can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
regarding the assistant salary potential increase in 2024?
Right.
My request to you guys is, can you let us know sooner than later? Because I do my budgets in March to go through my extension board, because some counties I know visit their commissioner supervisors later. For me, we are meeting in into June and July. So
Right.
sooner is better. If you come in and talk to me in May, that's a problem with the budget because it's already been somewhat figured out. So that is my request.
Exactly. But what I would anticipate is it going from the starting currently is 38. I anticipate it will go to 40. That's what my projection would be at the moment. So I do think we'll be in contact with our boards. It'll either be December or right after the first of the year, maybe as a legislative session begins, because we'll probably be visiting with state senators about this too.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Dave, there is a question about the overall budget. Where are we at in terms of status and overall extension budget? I think overall university budget, if there's anything new or updates there.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of just waiting for Chancellor Bennett to reveal his plan. So everything's kind of in a holding pattern until we hear what that is. I can tell you that, so we've been through like 3 iterations of budget cuts in just a few years here. And so I'll tell you what, there's not much left. We're working every strategy possible just to continue to float, to keep all of our positions open. We've had really good luck. We haven't had any pushback as far as opening positions, including positions that are county funded and university employed, which is that's big, because with some previous UNL administrations, they won't even let us fill those positions, even when they weren't funded by UNL tax funding. So on the hiring front, things are going well. But budgets are really thin. So as you see things happening here and there, it's whether it's relative to fall conference or programming budgets or any advice, just know that it's a pretty serious budget situation for UNL and the NU system overall. And we're just trying to position ourselves best in the best way possible to navigate it. But we have heard nothing from the new chancellor, regarding any directives or anything other than just the hiring of, not freeze, I guess it's kind of a hiring freeze for staff positions. And as I just mentioned, for those, what that means for us, that's extension assistants. And we have not had any requests denied to move forward with hiring extension assistant positions.
Dave, this is Kim.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate, we've been through these before. Do you anticipate a hiring freeze coming across the board for everybody?
No idea.
Possibly.
Honestly, I have no idea. The problem with, our argument would be, boy, if we had a hiring freeze for any period of time, our positions would stack up so quickly. And our argument also is, as we want to be a more and more engaged university, taking people off the front lines is not a good strategy as far as staying connected and with your constituents, right? And so I think Chancellor Bennett really had an eye-opening experience when he went on the Rhodes Scholar Tour. Shortly after he arrived, he had a chance to visit many of our ag labs, our research extension education centers. So I think that's going to help us, because I think he was pretty surprised at how connected and engaged the UNL system is across the state. That's not like that everywhere. And this is the first land-grant university, I believe, that he's been a part of. So that was something brand new to him. So I think he's viewing it right now, at least we feel he's viewing extension as a huge asset and a huge part of his operation that he can use to leverage our connection with stakeholders across the state. But no details on hiring or budget or anything at this time.
I have 2 more for you, Dave, before we end our time here. One is just a general question around, I'm going to phrase this as salary. So we talked about assistant salary updates, right? And then of course that I would say the next elephant in the room would be equity adjustments at the next level for if we continue to increase starting salaries. How are we making adjustments for folks that have been in the system for a long time or longer, things like that. I know this comes up a lot. We don't always have a lot of control over that, but I did want to pass that on because it came in through the chat.
Yeah, so on the extension assistant front that we were just talking about, when we did that salary enhancement a couple of years ago for assistants, we do look through the entire list of all of the assistants. And that's highly managed by INR HR. So we do look at everyone, regardless of how long they've been in the system, whether they are an assistant or associate within the extension assistant ranks, to do our best to be equitable, regardless of years of experience. We haven't had that adjustment for extension educators, as you know, since I think 2017, maybe. So extension educators were the first to go through that whole process, and that's kind of cycled through INR. So as you can imagine, timing's not good right now to revisit that, but we are aware that we need to be looking at that. And we're also looking at other states to see where we lie or how we compare to educator hiring salaries and promotion increases, that type of thing. There is a question that came into me directly about is there word on the streets? Maybe we're asking educators or faculty to find dollars to support their own salaries, and there's no truth to that. That is not the case. So I'm gonna squash that. We are not talking about doing that. You will hear a lot of talk about revenue generation in the coming weeks and months. We'll get really serious about that from a team perspective, thinking about program area teams and also as individuals. So definitely watch that, take that very seriously. That's a huge opportunity for us to augment our budgets with Nebraska extension. So we're doing really well in some program areas. Other areas it's a little tougher, to do that. So we're working on strategies that can better leverage us in that space.
I think that goes into the county budget team too, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the path. The revenue generation is the offsetting of also asking for more from the counties. The offset's going to be generating funding through programming, I would say, in order to pay for supplement more travel through programming accounts and things like that. I don't want to speak out of turn, Dave.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. So the county budget, so this goes back to the extension assistant question earlier, right? So this can be difficult when UNL's reducing their budget. We're asking counties to increase their budget, right? Because when you look at extension assistant salaries, NEP picks up a chunk of that. Extension administration has a part of that, but the counties pick up most of that, right? So politically, you have to be careful in how we're messaging the bigger picture. How are all of our budgets flexing, increasing, decreasing, et cetera. So we're trying to be very sensitive to the counties in that regard. On the other side of the coin, our arrangement with counties is that they do say they're going to supply office space, travel, all these kinds of things. We have an interlocal agreement. So do you need our counties to stay strong? For the most part, they have. If you look back over the last 5 years, our collective county budgets have been very strong across the state, which again is a testament to the value that they see in Nebraska Extension. If you're relatively new to Nebraska Extension, you know that Nebraska Extension is not required funding by county boards. It's discretionary. It's a discretionary item in every county budget in the state. They choose to fund extension because of the value they see it brings to the people that they represent. So that's huge. So every time we do something, or you're making a choice about where you spend time or where people in your office are spending time, always talk about the value it brings to the local decision makers.
I would just chime in, and I know this isn't across the board, but I know that some counties have adjusted county funded salaries and wages as well to keep up. And so that puts pressure on that extension assistant position as well.
Right, and absolutely. And then we see a lot, especially in the eastern part of the state. We see support staff salaries surpassing our extension assistants, right? Or in some cases, county employee assistant salaries surpassing UNL employed assistants. Yeah, absolutely.
And then one more for you, Dave, update on engagement zone 6, the engagement zone coordinator, what's happening with engagement zone 6, was that a question?
Yeah, so engagement zone 6, we're visiting with the engagement zone coordinators in that region and looking at what that path forward looks like for that region. So that's the position that Hillary Marico left last January. And so as we look at budget reduction strategies, one of the things we may do is absorb that zone into surrounding zones. And so we visited with the EZCs in that region to look at potential realignment of that region. So there's nothing official yet. We're still talking about it to see what that might look like moving forward. But that's just another one of those examples. We're doing everything we can to find spaces where we can be more efficient and realign to navigate the budget situation. So Carrie and Brian have just done great work covering that area for the last 7-8 months or so. So really appreciate their work in that space. And so they are 2 individuals that are particularly involved in thinking about what that looks like moving forward. And there could be other EZCs in the area that would be part of that conversation as well. So Kathy, I'll just look at your note about county budgets. The county upset that UNO expects county to pick up the travel expenses. I think that's something just to be really wise about how we track and report travel. When you're asking for travel support from the county, try to really lean on local travel requests. If you're traveling far away or another state for professional development, think about other sources, salary savings, revolving account dollars that perhaps we can use for that purpose. What you don't want to do is put a big claim through to the county for travel or something that raises a red flag. Right. So every once in a while, I'll have one of those pop up across the state, like, oh shoot, that should have not happened, because that just starts a whole huge conversation that's not good for that county and usually not good for extension or folks in the region as well. So we do expect the county to do their fair share. In some cases that means they provide vehicles. In some cases they have very robust travel budgets or a combination thereof. But extension is about connecting with people and not spending our time in the office. And so it's always a good reminder to the county officials that, hey, we can't do our job if we can't travel. This isn't the county clerk or the county treasurer that sits behind a desk waiting for customers to walk up desk. We have to be out and about in our counties. And by the way, we have this regional accountability region model, Nebraska Extension, where we strive to make sure that every program area is represented in your county. So we have people traveling here and we have our folks traveling there. So in the perfect world, that reciprocity helps all counties be better served. There's another question about IT, computers. This is a whole new conversation, but boy, IT security, as you all know, is a growing concern, and rightfully so. So I know a lot of our counties don't necessarily understand that and how important that is. Although I can tell you that NACO, Nebraska Association of County Officials, have had this topic on their regional agendas and their statewide agenda from IT folks saying, hey, folks, you have to be prepared with security measures in place because you have a lot of important data that you're retaining for the people in your respective counties. The computers that are used in the county level sometimes don't have to be as robust as what all of you need. You need computers you can travel with. You can do presentations, work on databases, sometimes GIS, all kinds of things, right? And durable computers and computers that you can, are on the road literally almost every day. So it's a different situation than what counties sometimes need for their other county positions. So that continues to be a challenge. If you need help and support in that area, let your local engagement zone coordinator know, and we'll help you work through that with your county officials.
Dave, this is Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie.
Just wanted to chime in. There was a local success story in that arena where county officials were questioning the cost of technology, and Angie Rushman and Galen were fantastic in providing all the details as to why the machines cost what they cost and how they're supported and why they're supported. And it actually led to that county official asking for our contact, wondering if maybe they would start doing some of their own work for the county with that same company. So just kind of those transparent conversations seem to really, do good.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks for sharing that, Carrie. That's very cool. So I think,
Go ahead, Hannah.
I was just kind of thinking about this, like in terms of the mileage and the laptop. And I guess one thing in our office, and I'm kind of posing this question to the group and then to you guys as well. I've been the lead educator for 3 years, and I still feel like I'm playing catch up in terms of like doing this correctly. And I guess like same as the laptop and mileage, and just kind of like balancing like what's county funded versus, like cost object funded. Do we have like documentation on that at all? Because I'm just even thinking like future onboarding for, like if I had to onboard someone where it's like, okay, so like this would be a cost object. This is what like mileage would look like out of your cost object. Now this would be cost object approved for your county. And I understand that that's different depending on, what it is and your county and your funding. Like I completely understand that that's different, but I feel like there's just not continuity across the board. So then people kind of are just, you're talking to fellow educators, and that's, in your area. So it's different than what, is maybe should be happening in your county. So I guess, and I'm kind of just saying this too, like, is there like, do other people have some sort of documentation with their county? Like, do you guys have anything like that? Like where you guys sit down as your office and you're like, this is how we're going to manage mileage versus like county versus this. Like, this is why our county, like, this is our policy with laptops. Like, this is how, like, these are the expectations of our county. Does anyone have that? Anyone? And I guess I say that because I'm like thinking about creating something like that for our office. And within it, I was even going to have something like, this is my, like, these are the expectations I would hope for, like handling conflict. And, like Jackie talked about that, where it's like the lead educator's role in managing conflict versus, interpersonal. But I was just like, gosh, I'm like, it feels like there should be something in there too, where it's like, and again, it's like, I just feel like I'm listening to all these conversations and I'm thinking about things that have happened lately in our office where I'm like, gosh, if it's like just communication gone haywire, where people are using their cost objects instead of the county, or they're claiming it to the county when it should be cost object. And I'm like, where's that document? Does anyone have one? That's my question. Or like, is that something that we should have?
I'm thinking about like a funding guide. I mean, we used to have that like for 4-H Council, I guess. I'm thinking in just in parallels of this is what we support and this is what comes out of this and this is how much every year and that kind of thing. Like in York, we divided it up. So we just said, we have this big budget in the county for mileage. This is how much Tanya has for mileage. This is how much I have for mileage. And then and this is how much Jenny has for mileage. And then we each kept track of that individually, but then we knew what was available. And that was all agreed upon. So that goes back to, like you said, Hannah, conversation. Like we had to have a whole group conversation about that and agree to our terms locally for how we were going to operate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just like, I mean, again, I'm just thinking of as our role of lead educator, like managing, the expectations of our office and, so how do we advocate for our budget, but then also like communicate what we're getting from administration in terms of budget. And I'm just kind of thinking of, how could we streamline that process so that we're all saying the same thing. And then it's like, we're sitting down and having these like staff meetings and we all have the same information, so then it's not, I don't know, I just, because again, yeah, like I feel like we're all saying and dealing with similar happenings right now. So I was just like, gosh, I wish I had that in paper so I could sit down at our next office conference and be like, you guys, we're going to review XYZ. Here we go. And it's not like me drafting it so then I don't get it wrong.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I was just curious what people had and if that was something that existed or not, or maybe I sound like a crazy person. I don't know.
Not at all. It sounds like maybe Anne does have a resource for you that she's willing to share out. And then that's what the space is for, right? Like ask for what you need and maybe others have that. But then also how can we support you in that space too? So yeah, see there's a lot of conversation in the chat just from that. So thanks, Hannah, for bringing that up, and I'm writing that one down too. All right, well, we have certainly gone past our time this morning, but thank you all for staying with us and in the conversation. I want to be conscious of that for all of you. And again, I still will stay here in case you have questions or needs that you'd like to express without outside of the whole group. But thank you, Dave, for your time today too, and for staying on with all of us. And we will talk soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.